You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Welcome back to Data Center Therapy, a podcast from IVOXY Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Matt, what's that noise? Cozzolino, and alongside me, I don't have anyone alongside me except our new engineer. Each episode, we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this beautiful sandbox called IT that we all play in. We all share our hopes and dreams, opinions, both positive and critical alike, with a healthy dose of empathy, because at the end of the day, we all need a seat on that couch. Today, I kind of teased a little bit, I've got Hoppy Shaw, our new engineer, with me, and we're flying solo this morning. So, Hoppy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so, you're our newest engineer with the IVOXY family. What brings you over here to us?
Well, I have been a long-time user of endpoint technology and a long-time engineer in endpoint space. And one of the cool things about my job is being able to help end users figure out how to best use their systems within the enterprise and all that fun stuff. And so I had an opportunity here recently to change roles and look for something a little bit more exciting and challenging. And here I am at IVOXY because you guys are doing great things, and I'm really excited to be a part of the organization.
Well, cool. Nice to have you. That's super exciting. It's really great to see a new face in the team. And I know we got an actual chance to meet the other day, which is super exciting in this whole remote behind the screen world, right?
Yeah, first time in real life actually meeting somebody at the company. I've been here a few weeks, and I felt like we needed to do like a proof of life thing where it's like, hey, you know what?
Hold up the newspaper or something?
Yeah, it really is me. There is a guy named Hoppy that works for you now. It's just not some shadow that you see, a video generated thing in Zoom. You know, I am a real person. So yeah, that was interesting. That was
so
nice.
You're not the Max Headroom of IVOXY. IVOXY end user compute.
We may have lost half the audience with that reference, but maybe not. I mean, there's probably some guys our age that are listening to this that will understand that.
I'm pretty sure that one will fly.
Yeah, that and new Coke would be the other one.
There you go. There you go. With Hoppy, I assume there's some beer flavors going on or beer jokes.
Yeah.
What's your best beer joke that you've heard about your name?
Oh gosh, there's so many. First, let me just level set. So that's my middle name is Hopkins, and when I was born, my parents at the time, my dad owned a series of grocery stores or managed a series of grocery store chains, and back in the 60s and 70s, there were old cowboys from these Western movies that used to come around and bring their horse for kids to sit on and hang out and pet the horse and meet the cowboys and stuff. This is of course long before the internet, where we got our entertainment back then. And my dad actually knew Hopalong Cassidy, so he always liked the name Hoppy, so they came up with Hoppy from Hopkins. And then I guess they thought, oh, it's a cute name, he'll outgrow it, but however many years later, I still go by Hoppy.
Stuck with it. I like it.
So it's kind of a nice conversation starter. But yeah, Hoppy is the name. Probably the best beer one is, I get a lot of references to holidays. So Hoppy birthday, Hoppy, Easter. That's a big one because of the
Very
bunny,
punny.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Hop on over.
Dad
jokes, yeah.
Exactly. It's all kind of. As far as the beer goes, though, I actually don't drink a lot of beer. I think as I get older, it's a little bit rough on the old system. So I kind of.
I hear you on that one.
Yeah, stick with other beverages.
There you go. Well, nice. So what do you like to do outside of work, outside of end user compute? Because we'll absolutely get to that. But Like, what else is there? What's Hoppy do? What's exciting for you?
I think living in the Seattle area, music is still a big thing for me. I moved here in the late '90s, so I missed kind of that early grunge piece coming from the
Okay.
East Coast. But
Like
I've
far
always,
East Coast, all the way East Coast?
yeah, I actually grew up in
Okay.
Myrtle Beach, South
Okay.
Carolina. Sometimes you'll hear that little Southern accent come out every now and then if I get lazy. And then all you have to do is just say "bless your heart,"
There you go.
But he's just from the East. He doesn't know. But uh, so moving from the East Coast out here, my wife is from Tumwater, Washington, and so we came out here, started working in tech in the late '90s, and I just started going to concerts, started really following more and more music stuff, and I got to following some really great progressive rock bands, and so concerts and music for me are really probably my biggest passion. Anybody that comes within, a few hundred miles, I'll definitely travel to see. I can't say that I'm a big Dave Matthews band, as I don't want to disappoint Yeti. I know he's not on the podcast today, but I do like them. I've never seen them actually in concert, so maybe I have to talk to him about that. But I just love live music. Any kind of live
Nice.
music, pretty much, is what I go for. So
Well, that's cool. So it sounds like you don't play any instruments or anything. I know we got a couple of engineers that do that. I'm not one of them, so
no, I play the heck out of air drums. Like
there you go. Maybe some
any
air guitar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like She's an Easy Lover from Phil Collins and Philip Bailey. I used to play that in my room because it was so simple, like a drum beat.
Hmm.
I had all these things that lay down on my bed where I'd tap the drums or fake drums. Uh, I don't know why that song kind of popped out as a reference to give here on this podcast, but yeah, that'd be one of the only instruments I play, air drums.
I think this is kind of the right speed for me at least. Is not necessarily musical, but I was watching Ant-Man and the Wasp the other day, and I was
Hmm.
thinking, you know what? Maybe I think I want to find another set of the drums and be able to do Rock Band again and some guitar because I can push buttons and flip a thing back and forth. I can
Yeah.
hit some. That's my level. It sounds like that's about right.
Cause there's people on TikTok making lots of money. I scroll, I see them all the time. They're on there just jamming on these plastic instruments. I'm like, somebody's sitting here and watching this, and they're making money.
Clack clack clack
Clack,
clack.
clack, 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 clack.
Well, that's exciting. Cool. So let's get into something a little, I guess, more relevant maybe.
Hmm.
What does end user compute mean to you? Like, what's that as a broad category? What's that encompass? What's included in there?
I think if you look up the definition probably on any kind of tech website, they'll go over kind of the ins and outs of what end user computing means in the industry. To me personally, when I say end user computing, I'm talking about everything related to the endpoint that an end user may touch. So
Okay.
I'm thinking mobile, in that case specifically like iOS, Android devices. We don't say Windows anymore, RIP. Uh, and so that I lump those in there. Now with mobility being laptops, so Mac and Windows laptops, desktops certainly, and then IoT devices. So we could talk about thin clients, we could talk about just general IoT devices. Those would be things that I would classify all around as end user computing devices or that
Okay.
space. Mhm.
Okay. So I've actually honestly kind of classically thought of end user compute as kind of VDI specifically, but
Mhm.
you're able to do more than that. You're doing MDM work. You're doing
Mhm.
application deployment. You're doing that kind of stuff as well.
Yes, yeah, and I think the trend really has been the last few years, especially. People are moving now where they're looking at the endpoint devices. It could be any device, so that includes mobile devices. It includes that laptop that they might have. It does include a VDI session, so we'll talk a little bit about desktop as a service as a kind of a new
That's just one
service.
aspect, though,
That's
right?
just one aspect,
Yeah.
exactly. So, I think that that piece and those other pieces combined, you really have to know that the end user nowadays, they just want to be able to get to their programs. A lot of them are SaaS applications or whatever. They're just trying to get on a device to get to where they need to go. And then as an end user computing specialist, how do we make that endpoint secure? How do we get them from point A to point B in a way that's meaningful, not as challenging, but also putting in the security features that we need to put in to protect the enterprise, protect the company, and protect the end user.
So I know when we talk about security, we talk about the layers, the Shrek onion layer of security. We got a bunch of different components that go with that. One of the pieces I end up touching is like VPN clients have this HIP policy, this endpoint policy, where I say I need this, that, and the other thing, or 802.1x, where you need to have this cert installed, and you need to be able to register your machine on the network with these set of credentials. How far down that path, or is that like, how far down that path do you go, or is that something that we're gonna split and say, hey, you start taking care of making sure the workstation does X, and I'm gonna start making sure the network does Y?
Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation, certainly. And I understand all of those components, having worked, I think, for maybe 8 different companies in the last 20 years and seeing a lot of different ways to do that kind of thing. It all starts with planning the phase, or planning things out, understanding how the users want to connect. A lot of companies now are moving a little bit away from the traditional VPN, only because a lot of their applications and other things are in the cloud now. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to secure those in different ways, whether it be, certainly multi-factor authentication is part of that, and any kind of access management rules and things that they want to have in place for those applications. Application management is another big one that users can bolt on to their applications to be application specific. Like, hey, this user has this access if they're coming from this area or this application, which is always a nice thing to put into place. So I see more companies going that route, just because on the infrastructure side, it's getting a little bit more difficult to figure out, all right, well, where are our users coming mm-hmm. from, and is the VPN experience still, a great experience? And there's other tools out there that have made VPN a little bit easier, like I think back to Direct Access, which is, I think, VPN Anywhere and those kinds of tools.
Always on, yeah.
Yeah, always on. I think it just depends on the company and what's works best for them.
Okay. What do you like to like for deploying all of these applications? It's been a long time since I personally have had to install apps on an endpoint that wasn't mine or like my mom's.
Yeah.
What? Right?
I'm laughing just because I had to help someone out last week. So yeah. Go ahead.
I get she shows up, or I show up to visit, and she's still got this, Matt, I've got this list of stuff that I need help with. So what do you like? How do you like to deploy apps in a corporate environment? It's not download an executable off of this website anymore. It's changed, right?
Right. I think the old term we used to push around, it's so funny, is sneakernet. It was mm-hmm. sneakernet something to some other place. There's so many different tools out there that will fit a company. The 2 tools that I'm probably got the most experience with, the first one being Configuration Manager, and we're going to talk about that name in a second because it's been 3 different names in the last 10 years. And then the other one would be Workspace ONE, which is a VMware product. And there's some other ones that we would classify as MDMs, like Mobile Iron, Jamf. Those can manage Macs. Especially Jamf is kind of known for Mac management, but they can also do iOS and other things. So going back to Configuration Manager, I started with that back when it was called SMS, and then they changed the name to System Center. Yeah.
System Manager Server, right?
Yeah. So then they changed it to System Center Configuration Manager.
It's a blast from the past.
Yeah, that's old school. SCCM is what everyone refers to it as, but that acronym always had a problem because guess what? There's a national organization that has the same acronym that would, if you Googled SCCM, you would always get that come up, as the first thing in Google, not System Center Configuration Manager. So Microsoft went through, changed their names, to the System Center Suite of Tools, Orchestrator, Operations Manager. Then they decided to change the name again to Microsoft Endpoint Management. So now, it's considered Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. I just always have said Config Man or Config Manager, and I think people understand what I'm talking about.
What we're working on. Okay.
So that's probably the biggest tool. It's a beast. There's a lot of moving parts, but that is a great tool to use to deploy applications for inventory, for management. It just does so many neat things. So I can definitely work with companies on that if they have it and they want to, kind of add some stuff to it. I love doing that kind of thing. Or maybe they're interested in bringing it on board. We can certainly do that as well, as we're doing with a couple of customers already. And I've only been here for 3 weeks, so that's kind of exciting. The other product, Workspace ONE with VMware. Another great tool. It can live in the cloud. You don't necessarily need on-prem resources, and it can manage everything: mobile devices, Windows, Macs. For our VMware customers that are already licensed for Workspace ONE, that are maybe managing Macs, or maybe they're managing Windows devices, you can always add mobile devices to that, or vice versa. Maybe you're just using Workspace ONE for mobile devices, but hey, you have a few Macs you want to manage. Let's turn it on. You're probably licensed for it, and we can get that going for you, and it's one less headache that you have to worry about.
How do you end up spanning the gap or spanning the difference between, I've got this Windows machine, this classic Windows machine that's domain joined, and I've got my Active Directory infrastructure and all of that comes along with it, and I went to the Apple store and bought a Mac, and I need some set of applications installed. I need to know that this Mac is mine and that device is yours, and they don't have like an Active Directory attached to it. How does the MDM solution, how does that application happen? How do you secure devices that way?
Yeah, that is really a question that every organization that decides to have both Mac and Windows devices has to answer. I've done Mac management where we've joined them to Active Directory. They've been part of the domain, and that's good for some things, especially when your wireless is certificate based, or maybe it's based on, is this a domain joined object, and you're pulling certain things from the device. But it also has other challenges, especially around password management. And as much as Apple
That's
has
what I was
worked,
thinking.
they've worked really hard at trying to make that a seamless process. But whenever you introduce File Vault, which is that encryption layer, that sits on top of the Mac to encrypt the hard drive, now you're going to get passwords out of sync, because you're never going to be able to really manage that, in a meaningful way. And I've always, being completely truthful, kind of struggled with that. And it's not because the implementation was incorrect or the technology was bad, as much as it was, it's just kind of confusing for the end user. And we're asking the end users to be more technical than maybe they should be or need to be in order to just do their everyday job. So what I've found is some really great third-party tools that do an excellent job of, and there's one in particular I'd like to just mention, just because I've found it to be a really great tool, and it's called Nomad. And what Nomad does is it reaches out, it puts a little, you put a preference file on your Mac, and there's some other things you do there to say, hey, look, this is my domain. This is how you get to it, and you put some other parameters in there. And so what happens is when the user logs in for the first time, it reaches out to your domain controller and grabs a Kerberos ticket. And so it'll challenge you for a username and password. You'll log in with that username and password, and then it pulls down this ticket, and then it allows you to have access to your resources that are through Active Directory, or things that might challenge you for password. And there's other things a part of that. I don't want people to get kind of scared that, I just have this ticket and I get to resources. No, there's other stuff around that. But the main point of Nomad is that it keeps your passwords in sync. So let's say the user decides to change their password on their Mac, what'll happen is Nomad will reach out, try to pull down that ticket. It'll say, "Oh, I can't because they don't match." Not that it knows your password, but it just knows it doesn't match, and so it prompts
All it
the
has
user.
to do is hash it, right?
Yeah, so it just prompts the user, "Hey, why don't you put in your Active Directory password?" And then what it does is it changes the password on the Mac. So it's a fake way to kind of trick the user to always keep their password the same as their Active Directory password, because it's wanting, you to update your local Mac, and so that takes care of the file vault issue. Anyway,
Okay.
I look into the product. It may work for you, might not. It's just one of those things that's pretty neat to have. So that's the biggest thing, password management, and then the applications. Some users or organizations, like I mentioned before, that if they have applications in the cloud, a Mac can get to those easy. And then, of course, that's where I think desktop as a service comes into play when you're on a Mac and you need Windows-specific applications or Windows-specific things.
Here's your hosted desktop.
Here's your hosted desktop through VDI, through Azure Virtual Desktop. Windows 365 is a new one.
Yeah.
And those are great options for Mac users in the enterprise that need to get to Windows-specific apps.
Okay. So overall, it sounds like it's still a little easier to have that single sign-on, you log in once experience on a Windows machine, but we've got some tools to be able to kind of bring that functionality into the Mac that might have to ask one extra time to get you to auth back and forth, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea.
If it all works perfect.
In a perfect world, in a perfect world, yes.
All right. So tell me about this Windows 365 piece. What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's the latest stuff from Microsoft. There's been a lot of talk in the last 2 years since I started working kind of on the beta product with Windows Virtual Desktop. That was kind of the first name. And those of you that are familiar with VDI space, it's essentially just a desktop that runs someplace that a user can log into and get access to their apps and things. And they're running a desktop either on-prem, on some servers, or maybe it's in the cloud. In this particular case,
how many times are we seeing, real quick, how many times are we seeing like the full-on desktop versus let me just run this application on a desktop remotely and present you just that app? Is that, I want to say I remember that coming up. Is that what we're getting towards?
That I think the trend was, hey, let's go AppV. So I'm big lover of AppV. Used that for years. And AppV is one of the app virtualization through Microsoft. Was a really great tool. A lot of folks use it in Citrix. They're just delivering apps. What I'm seeing now is it's a mix. So if you have users that only need, let's say, access to 2 apps, that's it. That's the only applications they need. They don't need a full-blown Windows desktop. Then it's fine to deliver that app. And you can do that through, it's no longer Windows Virtual Desktop. It's now called Azure Virtual Desktop. But you can do that through Azure Virtual Desktop. You can do that through VDI. You can do that through Citrix. There's ways to deliver just the application to the user. The next piece, though, that is becoming a little bit more easier now is deploying that whole desktop experience. So everything's kind of contained in the desktop. You can see what the user's doing. The profiles are saved, so there's a seamless experience. And what makes Azure Virtual Desktop unique is they allow you to have a multi-session experience on a single desktop, and it's persistent. So to break that down,
so I'm not stealing my logon from this other machine over there.
Yeah. So essentially, what's happening is you've got a desktop. You're presenting with a login. You log in. Once you get to that desktop, any changes you make to the desktop, files that you might save on your OneDrive, those are all things that are configured on the back end. Maybe you add some shortcuts to your desktop, change the background, do whatever you want to do. When you log off that system, that profile is saved just like an old school roaming profile somewhere in the cloud. And then when you log into another system, yes, it's magical. When you log into another system, that profile just attaches just like a regular roaming profile does. But the key difference here is that I can have 10, 20, 30 people logged into the same virtual machine. So I'm talking about one instance, one virtual machine that these users are all using at the same time. sharing resources, but their experience is persistent. So what's nice there is that from a cost savings, maybe you have a group of 30 people that need access to desktops. Well, I could create one or two VMs in Azure Virtual Desktop, spin those up, and give your users access. As long as the applications exist on those, then they're fine. And additionally, I can do the same thing, app virtualization, on these desktops as well, and make those a persistent experience. A good example would be like Visual Studio. That is a beast of a program. I can install that whole thing on one VM and then have multiple people access it. But when their profile saves, it will save their specific, Visual Studio preferences to their profile so that they have the same experience no matter which VM they log into. And the reason I brought up Azure Virtual Desktop first is because to explain Windows 365, I wanted you to understand a little bit about the Azure Virtual Desktop offering from Microsoft versus Windows 365, which is the latest thing, which kind of aligns more with the traditional VDI. That's something where you go to Microsoft, you say, hey, look, I need, this many desktops, and there's a SKU. They can size it based on your needs.
Desktop as a service kind of a thing?
Desktops as a service. Yeah. Microsoft's going to handle all the back-end stuff. They're going to provision the resources for you. They give you a nice console to log into. You assign those VMs, those desktops to a user, and that user has access to that desktop. You can manage it through Configuration Manager or Intune or other tools that you like, but it's Microsoft is handling all the network storage, the compute, and that's the major difference.
Portal.
Yep, yeah. That's the major difference. And they're not multi-user either. It's a one-on-one experience, and that is really the major difference between Windows 365 geared towards a certain user versus Azure Virtual Desktop, where you as an engineer or a company, you're going to manage the Azure backend infrastructure, the storage, the compute, the networking, all those things.
I know, or I recall from years ago when I've dabbled in the VDI space and the desktop space, that there was a bit of a difference between giving each user their own desktop and having users log into, and at the time what I'm thinking of is logging into a shared RDP session. Here's my RDP server that everyone's logging into.
Mm-hmm.
Have we addressed some of that? Like I want to say it was application whatever doesn't like having 6 instances open for 6 different users that are all logged into the same machine. Is that something that's been addressed by Windows now, just kind of broadly, or is there still kind of issues there?
Yeah, there's
not issues, but
yeah,
benefits,
I think the way that they've tried to address that now is there's a tool in Azure called MSIX App Attach. And the app attach piece is just like a virtual app where I can attach that application to that VM, and it will be kind of the same persistent experience we talked about.
Okay.
So it kind of takes care of the sharing piece that you were mentioning. It's a separate instance that's running on the VM in a separate way, not to overlap with one another. So
it makes me think that everything's kind of leaning on that virtualization component. My understanding is like even the Xbox or even your Windows 10, Windows 11 machines these days are booting up a hypervisor basically, and then giving you the experience or bolting the hardware onto that. And I could be completely wrong, but my understanding is like with the Xbox, I launch this game, it spins up a VM instance of that game, and then I decide to play something else, so it suspends it and spins up another one. So I'm never having to cohabitate those things. Is it a similar kind of thing, or
yeah, I don't
know.
It seems to work that way because I know every time I boot up my Xbox and I hit quick launch, everything's right there because it's the last thing I played. Same thing with Nintendo. I don't know. I just updated my Nintendo to get that new online subscription that for the family now that allows you to go to Sega Genesis games. So for Nintendo fans out there, that dropped. Yeah, that dropped 2 days ago. So if you've got the online membership, we're getting off to something completely different.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
You guys need to know this though. This is a big deal. My
This is
son
important.
my son called me frantically like, Dad, we got to order this. I was like, yeah, I know, son. I'm already on it. But it's a new subscription-based model where you can now have access to some more Nintendo games and
like I can play some
Sega
old
Genesis.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, Sonic Hedgehog 2. I was playing last night.
Nice.
It was pretty awesome and a little bit more expensive, than the regular family membership, but totally worth it for as many games as you get. Anyway,
That's cool.
so if you're a Nintendo Switch fan, go out and get that subscription. It's pretty awesome.
That one sits over in the corner, and we end up playing Xbox usually most of the night. But maybe we'll dust that off and play some old retro games for a minute.
Yeah. Last night, my son and I were playing Motorbike. Is it Motorbike? Motocross, the one with the hills. I can't. Excite Bike. That's it.
Bike, got it.
That used to be my favorite. So yeah, Nintendo Switch is great.
Does it do split screen?
Oh, I haven't tried that. We play on my TV. But
Off of one switch, and you each have a controller kind of a thing, or
yeah. So my daughter was playing, I think, on her Switch because we were playing Fortnite the other night. She was on her Switch. My son, who is in San Diego right now, he was playing on his Switch, and I was playing on the TV. But we did split screen with Mario Kart.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know. There's always been like some of them, but you kind of got to go out of your way to find split screen couch co-op.
Mm-hmm.
Games these days. Everything wants you to connect over the internet, and everyone's got their own device and their own TV and their own everything. But when you're both sitting in the one living room, that gets kind of difficult.
And I do, and just to close the loop on the Xbox Surface, Windows integration, I play on my Xbox all the time from my Surface. That's a great thing too. I've got a controller and I can sit in. Of course, not my office where I'm working for IVOXY, not during the day.
I got a couch back there, so hey, I might watch a movie every now and then.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you, Hoppy. It's been wonderful chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit. Everyone, go ahead and subscribe. I think I'm going to do this right. Let's give this a try. We've got iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Overcast, Spotify. Subscribe, like buttons, thumbs up. I don't know, smash things, hit stuff. I don't know, whatever it is. Go ahead and visit us at IVOXY.com. If you've got any questions, topics you want to hear about, talk about your next podcast, you can go ahead and email us at podcast@IVOXY.com. Thank you, Hoppy. Have a wonderful day. Everyone else, have a nice one.
Thanks.